Okay, welcome to the Sensation and Perception Hearing Notes. Most of the information on here can be found on pages 133 to 140 in the Myers textbook. You should be filling out the packet on page 12, 13, and 14 in your notes. In this presentation, you will understand how sound works. You will look at the structures of the ear, and you will also be understanding how sound is processed in the ear. We'll look at the different theories for sound, and then lastly we'll be looking at the problems with hearing. Okay, it's kind of a quick little review. Hearing is also known as audition. Okay, the receptor for hearing is the ear, and the stimulus are sound waves. Okay, what sound waves are is the vibrational energy of vibrating objects, maybe a guitar string. Okay, it's the movement of air molecules. Okay, it's either sound is compressed and it also expands. All right, us humans are very sensitive to faint sounds. It's a survival instinct, they believe. We're not too sensitive though, where we can hear actually the hissing of air molecules, but we are very sensitive to faint sounds. Okay, we're also remarkably attuned to different sounds and understanding the difference between the different sounds. Okay, so if you hear a voice behind you, you can almost unremarkably identify who that is behind you if you know the person. Okay, we'll kind of take a look at the sound waves now, the qualities of sound waves. Two differences you need to know is amplitude and frequency. Okay, amplitude describes the loudness of the sound, which is measured in decibels. Okay, so you're looking at the height of the wave. Okay, the taller the wave, the louder the sound, and then the shorter the wave, the softer the sound. Okay, we also are going to look at frequency. Frequency is the pitch of something. Okay, so you're looking from peak to peak on the wave. All right, so long waves is low pitches. They're going to have a very long wave. Okay, versus shorter waves, it's going to have a very high frequency. Okay, so the wavelengths from wave to wave are very close together. Okay, so here's kind of a diagram. We saw a similar one like this for vision. Okay, the shorter the wavelength, the higher the frequency. So from peak to peak. Okay. These are high-pitched sounds. Right under it, the long wavelength is low frequency, low-pitched sounds. So I would stop and make sure you have this copied down. Okay, amplitude, again, is talking about how loud something is. Okay, so the louder it is, okay, the taller the actual wave. Okay, and the softer it is, the shorter the wave. Alright, so now looking at parts of the ear, there's three regions of the ear. You have the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. And this is drawn on your diagram on page 12. Let's start with the outer ear. Okay, the role of the outer ear is to channel in sound waves through the auditory canal to the eardrum. Okay, so it's kind of in a funnel type structure. It's supposed to funnel sound waves to the eardrum. Okay, on the outer part of the ear, this is the part that you actually see. Okay, it's called the pinna, right, which collects the sound. Okay, you can pierce your pinna. Okay, so maybe that's how you can remember the name. Auditory canal. Okay, as sound and vibrations travel down this canal, right, before it actually reaches the eardrum. All right, and then you have your eardrum, which is a tight membrane that vibrates the waves. Right, so I would make sure you have this detailed. Okay, 1 is the pinna on your diagram, 2 is the auditory canal, and 3 is the eardrum, all of which are structures of the outer ear. Okay, if you're choosing not to use the note packet, I would make sure then you're drawing the ear in your notes. Okay, then you have the structures of the middle ear. The middle ear transmits the eardrum's vibrations through a piston made of 3 tiny bones to the cochlea. Okay, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. So these are all number 4. All three bones of the middle ear amplify and relay the eardrum's vibrations through the oval window into the fluid-filled cochlea. So there are the vibrations. They cause the vibrations on the cochlea. Okay, so let's move on to the structures of the inner ear. Structures of the inner ear you need to know are the semicircular canal, the cochlea, and the auditory nerve. So semicircular canal is number 5, the cochlea is number 7, and the auditory nerve on your packet is 6. Semicircular canals, there's 3 different ones, and they really help with understanding movement. Okay, 7, the cochlea. This is a big one you do need to know. The cochlea has the oval window and the basilar membrane, okay, that are in it. It is a snail-shaped tube in the inner ear. It's filled with fluid, and here sound waves trigger impulses. So I have it in bold. Transduction takes place here. So if you're thinking about the eye, okay, transduction takes place in the retina. Okay, for the ear, transduction takes place in the cochlea. The oval window in the cochlea, okay, is the cochlea's membrane where the stirrup is attached. So it helps send the vibrations, okay, into the cochlea. The basilar membrane, which is the hair, okay, in the cochlea, okay, the movement triggers and changes to impulses. So that's where that transduction is important. Okay, there's 16,000 hairs in the cochlea. Okay, damage to the hairs results in hearing loss. Okay, so it detects loudness. So how loud something is the number of hairs that actually are activated. Okay, so they are important. The auditory nerve sends the message to the brain then. Okay, just like the optic nerve, okay, the auditory nerve then relays the impulse, okay, to the brain. Different parts of the brain then, again, it's going to travel to. It's first going to go to the thalamus, which is the switchboard. Okay, and then we'll go to the temporal lobe, or your temporal lobes. All right, finally then, within the temporal lobe, it'll be registered in the auditory cortex. Okay, so here's the process of hearing. Okay, once the sound waves enter the inner ear, okay, they will travel to the middle ear, which transmits the eardrum's vibrations through a piston made of 3 bones, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Okay, that will then go to the cochlea, the snail-shaped tube. Okay, the incoming vibrations cause the cochlea's membrane, the oval window, to vibrate, moving the fluid that fills the tube. This motion causes ripples in the basilar membrane, the hair cells. The movement of the cells triggers the impulse into the adjacent nerve fibers, which form the auditory nerve, and that connects via the thalamus to the temporal lobe. Here's a nice little diagram, okay, if you want to break it down. You have vibrations on the eardrum. Okay, the vibrations go to then the middle ear. Okay, the vibrations then, once they go through the anvil, stirrup, okay, and the hammer, it's going to go through the oval window, okay, which is going to move the fluid in the cochlea, which is going to vibrate the hairs of the basilar membrane, which the receptor hairs are going to bend, and then transduction, it's going to change to an impulse. The impulse goes to the auditory nerve. Auditory nerve takes it to the thalamus. The thalamus directs it to the temporal lobe, and then sound is processed in the auditory cortex. So I would make sure you have this written down in your notes somewhere from piece to piece to piece as sound travels through. Okay, here's a pretty good diagram of the ear, the cochlea, and then you have the auditory cortex or the temporal lobe. Okay, on page 13, okay, I do have a diagram that maybe you want to label to help you understand the different parts. So number 1 on there is the eardrum. Okay, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is kind of cut off, but you have 2 is the hammer, 3 is the anvil, and 4 is the stirrup. Okay, you have 5, which hopefully you understand as the cochlea. All right, and then 6 is the nerve fibers. And then right above 6, if there was a number there, 7, that would be the auditory nerve, which we've gone through. Okay, so what tells us how loud something is going to be? The amplitude we talked about. Okay, I mentioned it before, but it's the number of hairs that vibrate in the basilar membrane, okay, in the cochlea. So the more hairs that vibrate, the louder the sound is going to be. Okay, so one theory is known as the place theory. Okay, this looks at high-pitched sounds and low-pitched sounds. High, low, okay. Hermann von Helmholtz came up with this theory. It's the theory that links the pitch we hear with the place where the cochlear membrane is stimulated. Okay, so where exactly the sound hits the membrane is going to determine the pitch that it is. Okay, higher pitched or higher frequency sounds are by the oval window, which is the blue area. Okay, so if sound is registered right when it enters, okay, the cochlea, it's probably going to be a higher pitched sound. Okay, which can also explain the theory why a lot of older adults, okay, can't register high pitched sounds. A lot of the times those hairs that are on the basilar membrane, okay, they get damaged, right? So that's why a lot of the times the adults cannot detect those higher pitched sounds. Okay, lower pitched sounds are by the curved area on the membrane, the red area. Okay, some people found flaws with this theory, and they really believe that the lower pitched sounds, the red ones, are really processed all over. Okay, so that's what another theory did develop. Okay, so frequency theory. The frequency theory states the theory that the rate of nerve impulses traveling up the auditory nerve matches the frequency of the tone, thus enabling us to sense the pitch. Okay, so our brain is registering the rate in which how many nerve impulses we have. Right, so the more the nerve impulses, the higher the pitch. Okay, the less the nerve impulses, okay, the lower the pitch. All right, so this helps us understand the understanding of how we perceive low-pitched sounds. All right, sound localization. In the book, it kind of talks about why we actually don't have our ear on the top of our head. Okay, the reason why we have ears on either side of our body is because it lets us understand the world in 3 dimensions. Okay, sound on the right side, if we're hearing a sound on the right side, okay, somebody's calling out from your right side and it goes right to your right ear. It's probably going to be more intense on the right side, and it can help you identify the direction in which the sound is coming from, okay, which is known, okay, as sound localization, the auditory system's ability to locate where the sound is originating from. Okay, if a sound originates closer to the left ear, the sound will reach your left ear sooner, and it'll be more intense for your left ear. Right? There's a little small amount of lag time. Okay, your auditory system can pick up on the lag time it takes to reach the other ear, which helps you identify sound localization. Right? When an ambulance, let's say, is passing you on the right, you could know that it's coming from the right side, or it's going to pass you on the right because it's reaching your right ear first. However, what if the sound is equal distance from either ear? Okay, you struggle with kind of understanding where the sound is coming from. Okay, if it's above your head, okay, if it is behind you, if it is below you, all right, all within equal distance of your ears, you are going to struggle where the sound is coming from. We are going to do this in class, so I'm going to skip it. Deafness. There are generally 2 types of deafness, 2 that are specifically talked about in the textbook. One is conductive deafness. This is the inability to hear because you damaged the structures in the middle ear or the inner ear. You did something to the anvil, stirrup, or hammer, okay, or you did something to the cochlea, all right, which is preventing you from being able to hear. And this is where a lot of the times hearing aids are used, okay, to help you make those vibrations. Okay, Nerve deafness or sensory neural deafness is the inability to hear linked to a deficient in the body's ability to transmit impulses from the cochlea to the brain. So this is something a little bit more serious in terms of the auditory nerve, okay, is not getting those impulses up to the brain. All right, so it's not so much the structural damage. This is something more with the nerves. Sometimes they do use cochlear implants now, which is a device for converting sound into electric signals. They help create electric signals and stimulate the auditory nerve through electrodes, okay, threaded into the cochlea. All right, so it tries to help transmit or create the vibrations into those electric impulses, which then can be sent to the brain. Okay. Okay, so let's review the physical properties of waves in general. The difference between vision and hearing. You might want to jot this down somewhere because a lot of the times it's used as an analogy. Okay. So the short wavelength could also mean a high frequency. Okay. It's looking for from the distance from peak to peak. Okay. That's a very short wavelength. It's also known as having a really high frequency. Okay. So this is going to be meaning something like the bluer the color or the higher the pitch sounds. Okay, the longer the wavelength, the redder the color, or the low frequency, it's going to have the low pitch sounds. Right. In comparison to the other side, the greater the amplitude, so the higher the height of the wave, okay, the brighter the color, the louder the sound. Okay, the smaller the amplitude, the duller the color, or the softer the sound. Okay, so recapping, you should understand the sound. So you should understand sound waves. Okay, you should understand frequency and amplitude. You should understand the difference between the outer, the inner, and the middle ear, and the components within each, and how sound gets from the outer ear to the brain. The two different theories of sound were discussed, place theory and frequency theory. And last but not least, we discussed some different issues some people can have with hearing.